Inte det heller? Nej. Ska vi se, vad är tekniken som inte... Nu har vi 3 mikrofoner, så jag hoppas att de fungerar snart. Gör det. Funkar den? Lägger. Ta bort det här. Ja, hej, namaste och ciao. Jag fick 2 frågor här precis innan jag kom upp. Det ena var om maten. När ska vi få mat? Det var en relevant fråga. 18.00 siktar vi på att vi ska få mat. Och sen den andra frågan är, som jag vill gärna ta upp, det är att ni kommer ihåg att sätta på era mobiltelefoner när ni ska gå hem. Därför att man vet aldrig om det är någon viktig person som ska ringa er. Excellency Ambassador of India, Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar, the Honorable Mr. Pascal Alan Nazareth, Mrs. Annette Hede, Mr. Göran Arius, distinguished guests, colleagues at the government offices, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of SOCO, ST and World Nation government offices, it is my great honor to welcome you to this evening on diversity and human values. The program today holds much interesting information, wonderful culture, and some very tasty food from India and Italy. Our international evenings are often conducted in multiple languages. So even today, we shall communicate in Hindi, Italian, English and Swedish. Mina damer och herrar, hjärtligt välkomna. Temat för dagen är mångfald och värderingar. Ord som är självklara för var och en av oss, men ändå så mångfacetterade och komplicerade att ena gången kan de förknippas med frihet, medmänsklighet och kärlek. Och en annan gång med krig, hat och mord. Vår miljö är en produkt av det vi är. Så vad är vi? Jag vill påstå att vi är våra värderingar. Utan värderingar är människan ett tomt skal. Det är våra värderingar som bestämmer våra handlingar. Och de egna värderingarna mår bäst av att brytas mot andras värderingar. För så skapas tolerans för andra människor, åsikter, tankesätt och beteenden. Ömsesidig tolerans är viktigt eftersom vi aldrig kommer att tänka exakt lika. Och vi ser ofta sanningen fragmenterad ur olika synvinklar. Den fackliga rörelsen kämpar för bättre livsvillkor för de egna medlemmarna, men även för en rättvis värld och goda värderingar. Många av oss anser att Mahatma Gandhis idéer om icke-våld och medmänskliga värderingar är en bra väg för mänskligheten. Så låt oss titta på mångfald och värderingar utifrån ett fackligt och gandhianskt perspektiv. It is said that Mahatma Gandhi is a prime component of India's greatest strength, its soft power. It is also said that diplomats are essentially peacemakers. It is when they fail that the generals are called in. Ladies and gentlemen, if the world had diplomats, like the present ambassador of India to Sweden, there would be no wars. The world would never need any generals. He has a personality that is a total reflection of whatever Mahatma Gandhi ever wanted us to be. I have the honor of inviting to the stage to open this event, Excellency Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar.
Thank you very much, Naseer. Thank you for your very generous and gracious comments. I really would like to put the generals out of business. So I guess I think there's need for all people. But let me say what a great delight and what a great pleasure it is for me to be here this evening and to address this very august and very distinguished gathering. I would like to thank, of course, Initiative Asia, Naseer Faridoon, and Mr. Yoran Arius for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to be here. As I understand, since Naseer was talking about food, I don't want to stand between you and the food. And as I would understand, I provide a bit of the appetizer, and Ambassador Nazareth will provide the main course for this evening. So my hors d'oeuvre, my appetizer is going to be a short one, but I'll share a few thoughts with you. We are talking about Mahatma Gandhi, so let me, of course, he is known very well in terms of what he did, what he contributed. But he is seen after so many years, after about 60 plus years since his assassination, he is seen more as an icon than are the people familiar with his doings, his actions, his teachings. So let me first briefly speak about his life and his time. Maybe some of you are aware he was born in 1869, 2nd October. This was a day, incidentally, which in 2007, the United Nations decided to celebrate every year, mark every year as the day of International Day of Peace and Non-Violence. He trained to be a lawyer in England at the Temple Inn. His first case was in South Africa in 1893. That was the place where he first came face to face with social oppression, with discrimination, with racism, and with institutionalized injustice. He perfected his instrument of satyagraha, or the force of truth, by refusing to cooperate with inequitable and unjust laws. South Africa was the country where he also honed his instrument of ahimsa, or non-violence. And these are the two implements which he used with devastating effect when he returned to India in 1915 to fight the British colonialists. And I think those are the instruments of ahimsa, non-violence, and satyagraha, which have been used since his time in such a formidable and invincible manner. Friends, what is remarkable about Mahatma Gandhi is not so much his accomplishments, although indeed they are legendary in their own right. What is truly amazing is the means through which he achieved them. Gandhiji was never motivated by quest of office or by personal ambition. In fact, it is striking that he never held a political office or any official title throughout his life. In essence, Mahatma Gandhi was a man of action. He was a man incessantly in search of truth. He called his autobiography the story of my experiments with truth. He was a perpetual and constant experimenter. He embodied the kind of transformational change and energy that can be made when ordinary people come together to do extraordinary things. He was able to bring about change in the mental attitude and thinking and actions of ordinary people not through physical power or official status or through monetary inducements, but through the force of his personality and his ethical and moral stance. Gandhi's ultimate gift to the world was in applying the spiritual truth of love, justice, and non-violence to combat oppression, discrimination, and hatred in social and political arena. His victory gave immense hope and confidence to mankind that these malaise afflicting human society can be effectively dealt with without resorting to violence, wars, or bloodshed. Friends, I will mention just two of his sayings and teachings to demonstrate that Gandhi's thoughts and ideals are even more applicable and valid today than they were about a century ago when they were first propounded. And the first saying I refer to is, "An eye for an eye will make the whole world go blind." I think that is something that we need to reflect upon in the world of today, when we have extremism, when we have terrorism, when we have violence all around us. And if we decide to deal with violence, that is going to lead to even greater bloodshed, even greater destruction. So the path that the Mahatma preached was one of dialogue amongst people, dialogue amongst communities, dialogue amongst nations, dialogues amongst civilizations. Not a clash of civilizations, but a communication between civilizations. And if this was true, and he proved that it was true during his own time, by using the instruments of non-violence, by communicating with the opponents, I think it is even more true today and even more relevant today when we need to focus on this way to move forward. The second teaching that I would like to mention is hate the sin, not the sinner. Mahatma Gandhi always fought against the British policies of discrimination, and that is the reason why when India gained independence, India decided to make its first Governor General the British Viceroy. I don't think you will find such an example anywhere in the annals of history where the colonial power, the head of the colonial power, becomes the first official of the independent country. And that is what Gandhi wanted. He was against the policies that were being pursued by the British to oppress the Indian people, but he was not per se against the British. And that was also the reason when the proposal was made to India, to Pandit Nehru, who was a protege of Mahatma Gandhi, to launch the idea of the Commonwealth. And without an India, the Commonwealth would not have taken off the ground. But India agreed, and the Commonwealth has come to be and has achieved successes over the last 65 years. Friends, the Mahatma had far-reaching and revolutionary ideas on social equality, on removal of untouchability, on preservation of environment, gender equality, and status of women. Indeed, this planet will be transformed into an oasis of peace, justice, harmony, prosperity, and happiness for all its inhabitants if we were to follow today what Mahatma Gandhi taught about a century ago. With these words, I leave you and thank you very much for inviting me to be here and for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm allowed to put one question to each speaker today.
Okay.
So my question to you is, why do you love Sweden so much?
I love Sweden so much because I feel very much at home in this place. I think Sweden and India, in spite of our disparities, Sweden is 450,000 square kilometers, India is about 3.2 million square kilometers. Sweden is about 9.3 million people, India is a little more in population. So notwithstanding these disparities, there is so much in common between us. I feel very much at home. I think the same warmth, hospitality, generosity, and the same values of democracy, of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And I think it is not only me, there are so many of my compatriots who are here, and I am told that most of the people, Swedish people who go to India, they immediately get attached because they are received also with equal warmth and love and affection and fervor. Thank you.
Thank you. For you to remember us even when you are in India. That's a Swedish question. Thank you. Albert Einstein, a great scientist, once said, "If something is wrong with our current understanding, we should immediately abandon that error in the sure and certain hope that a better understanding can be found." In 1948, when Einstein heard that Mahatma Gandhi had been assassinated, he remarked, "A leader of his own people, unsupported by any outward authority, a victorious fighter who always scorned the use of force, a man of wisdom and humility. Generations to come, it may be, will scarce believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth." To find a better understanding of the thinking and principles of the man Einstein so eloquently described, we have invited the writer of the book Gandhi's Outstanding Leadership. He is deeply committed to Gandhian ideals and is working tirelessly for years to spread the message of peace around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very special welcome to the founder and managing trustee of Sarvodaya International Trust in Bangalore, the Honorable Mr. Pascal Alan Nazareth.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have been invited to speak on Gandhi in various places. Until now, I thought my greatest achievement was, the greatest honor done to me, was to have been invited to the National Defense College in Delhi to speak on Gandhi. This is our war college, where the junior most participant in the course is on the rank of brigadier and above. For the last 5 years, I have been invited every year to come and speak on Gandhi. It's a great honor done to me. But today I feel even more honored that I have been invited to come from India to speak to senior civil servants and their representatives of their organizations. I believe there are 100,000 civil servants in Sweden, and they are all represented here. That I should have been invited to come to speak to you is a very special honor, and I am very grateful to those who have invited me and those of you who are present here to listen to me on Gandhi. Now, maybe I should begin by telling you why in my old age I got involved with Gandhi. They say, as has already been recounted by Mr. Faridoon, that diplomats are peacemakers. It's when the diplomats fail that the generals are called in. As a diplomat, as I went through life, I discovered that there is no greater peacemaker than Gandhi. And what a simple way in which he attempted and succeeded in bringing peace. He said non-violent struggle is not a program for seizure of power. It is an effort to bring about a change in relationship, to bring about a transformation of relationship. So the whole effort was never to defeat or humiliate the opponent. It was always to make a friend out of an opponent. That was his whole approach. Like Abraham Lincoln, there are a lot of similarities between the two. He said that he believed that the best way to get rid of an opponent, the word enemy was not in Gandhi's vocabulary. To get rid of an opponent was to make him a friend. And like Abraham Lincoln, he wanted to establish that it is not might that is right, but right that is might. So whatever you do, you must do the right thing. He described God as truth. In fact, he described truth as God. I couldn't understand what this meant for many years when I was young. But later it dawned on me, what is truth? Truth is what is. You know, when you want to know what happened, you tell me the truth. What happened? What happened actually? So what is the truth. Now the only reality that always is, has always been is, and always will be is, the unchanging reality is God. So in that sense, God is truth. And he defined truth as God, and he said, so if you stick to the truth, God is on your side. You cannot lose, because by definition God cannot lose. Of course you might not live to see the success of your cause, but that's not important. The important thing is the cause. You must be willing to die for your cause. But there should be no cause for which you are willing to kill. That was the whole basic approach. Now Gandhi was a great innovator, because until he came along, truth and non-violence had never been put together like two sides of the same coin. They were always separate virtues. This man puts them together. And he makes truth the other side of the coin, non-violence the other side of the coin of truth. In fact, he says the only way you can achieve truth means really ultimately finding union with the divine, that the only way you can achieve this is by the path of non-violence. Non-violence is just another way, another word for love. Unconditional love. You must love everyone, including your enemy, including the one who is going to assassinate you. That is the important thing, because then you are following the truly divine path. Now Gandhi's achievements are amazing, but in order to assess what his assessments are, maybe one should begin by by knowing what was the scenario and the situation in which Gandhi functioned. I'll just read out to you two little excerpts. One from the greatest living Gandhian scholar called Gene Sharp. The other is by the great and renowned historian Will Durant. Gene Sharp has written, Gandhi was the contemporary of Tsar Nicholas, Lenin and Stalin, Kaiser Wilhelm and Adolf Hitler, Woodrow Wilson and Frank Roosevelt, of the last emperor of China, Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. He bridged the span between the time when wars were fought by armies with rifles to the time when they were fought with atom bombs. Will Durant, commenting on developments in Asia in the first half of the 20th century, has stated, China followed Sun Yat-sen, took up the sword and fell into the arms of Japan. India weaponless, accepted as a leader, one of the strangest figures in history, and gave to the world the unprecedented phenomenon of a revolution led by a saint and waged without a gun. He also goes on to say that not since St. Francis of Assisi has there been any life that is so close to the life of Christ as Gandhi's. And Gandhi, for me, I said this yesterday, the ambassador, is a very interesting and amazing combination of two important spiritual messages. One is that of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the equivalent of the Sermon on the Mount of Christianity. This is the Hindu version. Apparently, the whole episode is centered in the middle of a great big civil war between two branches of the same family. And here is the great warrior Arjuna, who is hesitating, he is unwilling to go into war. He says, how can I go into war? He is the greatest of all the warriors. He said, by every arrow that I send out, I'm going to kill one of my own relations. It's almost like Gandhi speaking. But Lord Krishna tells him, when you are confronted with evil and injustice, you just have no option. Your duty is to stand up and confront it. What happens is not your responsibility. You don't have to worry about it. Your duty is to confront evil and injustice. That is one important element in Gandhi, the most important element. But Gandhi, when he went to London, had also read the Bible, was deeply influenced by the Sermon on the Mount. And what is the message of Christ? The message of Christ is that through self-suffering, through the crucifixion, redemption will come. So Gandhi's whole approach really is stand up for the truth, be willing to suffer, willing to give up your life bravely, but never to kill. So the combination of these two messages of standing up against evil, against injustice, and to do that non-violently and to be willing to sacrifice your life in the process is Gandhi. And the combination of the two is what makes Gandhi such a powerful revolutionary. That's why I always describe him as the non-violent revolutionary. Now, Gandhi's great achievement of getting the British to leave with this esoteric message of truth and non-violence is the most amazing thing you could imagine. The British always used to boast that the sun never sets on the British Empire. Now, in one way, it's a very foolish boast because the sun has set on every empire in the past, since the ancient Persians, to everyone else. But in one way, it was very accurate because the empire extended all the way from Fiji in the east to Vancouver in the west. Every hour of the day, the sun was up on a British, right up on a British flag. When it was setting somewhere, it was rising somewhere else. Now, this was the empire that Gandhi set out to bring down with these two words, truth and non-violence. It is the most amazing, I describe it as a management achievement of the 20th century, to come around with this simple message, to inspire a whole people completely dispirited, who saw no hope, oppressed people, starving, and to tell them that it was possible, by being willing to suffer, by getting into non-violent struggle, that he could get the British to leave. Must have been the most esoteric message in the world. Initially, the British were rather pleased with the message because when Gandhi came back from South Africa, there was a very well-established militant movement in India. Now it's called this a terrorist movement. Those it was called the militant nationalists. They were killing British officials, in India. They killed them in London. The Lord Hardinge on a great ceremonial ride on an elephant had a bomb thrown on him. He nearly died in the process, but he lost hearing completely in 1 year until the rest of his life. Now, when a man came around, he said, no, that we are only going to do non-violent struggle. Initially, the British were pleased until they discovered how powerful he had become. And then, of course, for talking about freedom for India, etc., he was arrested and put in jail for sedition. Because no doubt he was talking non-violence, but the end product was he wanted the British to leave. And this the British were not very happy about. But they left. The ambassador has already mentioned how India then asked the last viceroy, the symbol of the oppressive colonial government that India had fought for so many years. He is now asked to become India's first Governor General. This is the extent of the transformation of relationship and proof that you can fight the evil and not hate the evildoer. Ambassador also mentioned about the Commonwealth. What is not very well known is Gandhi's great achievements as social emancipator. Gandhi said that we have no right to tell the British that they are being unfair to us if we are going to treat our, what those days was very unfortunately called the untouchables, 1/5 of India, who were not allowed to live within the village limits, who were not allowed to draw water from the village well, certainly not to enter the temple, not to go to the village school. It's only when the holy cow died, then no one would touch it, however much they might love it when it was alive. That was the time that these people would be called in to remove the dead animal. They would then skin it, and the poor people, that was the only meat that they could eat. So Gandhi made the emancipation of the untouchables an important element in the national movement. And he said that we have got to fight this evil. He said that he would refuse to accept that this was any essential part of Hinduism. He said, if anyone could prove to me that it's an essential part of Hinduism, I would be the first person to sort of rise up against this tenet of Hinduism. He adopted an untouchable family. He made them to come and stay in the ashram he set up in India. Some of his high caste financiers were absolutely thunderstruck, wonderstruck and shocked. They said, you know, you can do all sorts of things, but why do you have to bring them into the ashram? But he said, no, I believe this is the right thing to do. So even though some of them stopped their financial support to him, he brought them in. And then he had various fasts. He was a great communications man. Every one of his fasts, the whole country was on tenterhooks, that he might die. And the British were terribly scared, but sometimes when he was in prison, he would begin a fast. And they would quickly tell him, no, you can go, for fear that he might die in prison, which then, of course, would cause enormous problem. But as a result of his thing, he managed to change the Indian consciousness about the evil of untouchability. When independence was to come, Nehru was asked to make his interim cabinet. He brought the list to show to Gandhi and to get his blessing. Gandhi had to look at it. And he said that the untouchable leader Ambedkar is not in it. Nehru said, why should he be there? He doesn't belong to the Congress party. He has been saying terrible things about you and terrible things about me. Why should he be there? Gandhi tells him, Jawaharlal, independence is coming to India, not to the Congress party. Please put him in. So Nehru puts him in. Ambedkar, then highly trained person, great legal mind, constitutional expert, becomes the first law minister of India, becomes the chairman of the Constitution Drafting Committee. Today everyone hails him as the architect of the Indian Constitution. He could not have been there if it was not for Gandhi, and that was Gandhi's prophetic vision. Now, as chairman of the Constitution Drafting Committee, Ambedkar made sure that a whole lot of safeguards were built in for his own people and for other disadvantaged groups. It is the first case of positive discrimination written into a constitution anywhere in the world. But none of this would have passed if it was not for Gandhi's great influence on the Constitution Drafting Committee and on the Congress Party. So every one of these safeguards was accepted and formed part of the Indian Constitution. As a result of this, obviously, when the Constitution was framed, untouchability in all its forms was proscribed. I'm not saying that untouchability has disappeared from the country. We don't use the word untouchables any longer. They're called Dalits. What has been there for 3,000 years can't be expected, in 50 or 60. But legally, it is completely proscribed. These group of people now have an important political party of their own. In one of our states, Uttar Pradesh, which is like the California of India, the largest and most influential state in the country, we have had a woman chief minister, double disadvantage, a woman and a Dalit who has been chief minister thrice, on the third time in her own right, completing a full 5-year term. We had another untouchable leader, a man called K.R. Narayanan, studying the London School of Economics, a brilliant student. So when he finished, his professor, Professor Lasky, wrote to Nehru to say that this is a very bright young man, do something for him. So Nehru was foreign minister, he put him into the foreign service. Like me, he served in Burma, and he met a Burmese wife whom he married. He rose in the service, became our ambassador to Turkey, our ambassador to China, ambassador to Washington. When he finished there and came back to India, they made him Minister for Science and Technology. Then he became Vice President, then he became President of India. Incredible. And he started at the lowest level. And it is said about him that on one particular occasion, in that little school, it was a Christian missionary school, he did not have the 1 rupee. 1 rupee today is 1/50th of a dollar. Those days maybe it was 1/10 of a dollar. So he would have to stop his education. The school took compassion on him. They gave him a free ship, and he completed studies. And at every stage he got a scholarship. The Tatars gave him a scholarship to go and study London School of Economics. This is a good case also to show not only the transformation of India that brought about through Gandhi's non-violence, but also brings out the fact that there is so much of talent at the lowest level of every society, if only we are willing to look, to give them the adequate opportunity. We've had another president, a Muslim president, whose father was a boatman. For his inauguration, the father and all his relations came, not looking very smart, but they came to his inauguration, all boatmen. He became our missile man, great scientist, and then he became President of India. These are the sort of transformations Gandhi's non-violent revolution has come. But the other thing also not known is women. Until Gandhi came along, women could only leave their house to go to the temple, to go to the village well, to the market, and maybe to a neighbor's house for a wedding or something. The question of any woman walking on a street holding a political placard was completely unthought of. It was Gandhi who first brought them into this. Clever man, he must have realized that this business of non-violent struggle, most probably India's women would understand better than India's men to start with. Initially they were hesitant, but they came as volunteers when the big congresses were held. Later they became active, fighters themselves. Indira Gandhi, as a young girl, there was a children's, it was called the Monkey Brigade. And they were sort of carrying messages on behalf of the leaders who had been arrested, put in jail, etc. But women got involved in large numbers. So when independence came, there was not the slightest doubt nor opposition to women. Universal adult franchise. Most of the women are illiterate, they can't even sign their name. All given the right to vote. When Nehru was asked about it, he said, you can't learn swimming until you get into the water. So, how do we say that, we are democratic unless we give everyone the right to vote? We'll make our mistakes, but we must start sometime. And it's amazing. You all know in the West what a struggle it was for women to get the right to vote. In Britain, they got it only after the First World War because of all their contribution in the factories and all that. In the United States, after 150 years or more of their independence, the women got the right to 1927. In Switzerland, I believe they got it in 1960. So you can see the extent of the revolution that Gandhi has brought about. Now the other thing also not very well known is that India was a highly feudal country, feudalism deep-rooted. There were 560 Rajas, Maharajas, Zamindars, Talukdars, all living in great style, building palaces, crystal from Europe, even in the toilets it was Royal Doulton. You can go and see them now, when you visit India. Three-fourths of India is starving. These were the lifestyles, and actively, of course, encouraged by the British. And they kept doing this because, they had certain ranking of the Rajas. Either they had 3-gun salutes, 7-gun salutes, 9-gun salutes, 11-gun, and depending upon how well they entertained the colonial master, their ranking then improved. So for this, they kept on sort of, competing with each other as to who would entertain the colonial master better. When independence came, the question was, what happens to them? We know what happened in France to get rid of deep-rooted feudalism. How much that guillotine worked, day and night. What happened in Russia? What happened in China? In India, overnight, a highly feudal country becomes a democracy based on universal adult franchise without chopping anyone's head off. Every one of these people was allowed to keep what was considered their personal property. If they had 5 palaces, they could keep 1. The others were now all sort of taken away. That's why we have the smartest hotels now in the world. All these palaces now have been converted into hotels. This is another major achievement of Gandhi. Not only that, there was a great danger that India might be balkanized. Each of these fellows then said, no, we want this or doing that. There, of course, we have also got to be grateful to Lord Mountbatten because he made it very clear to them, either you join Pakistan or you join India. The question of being independent does not arise. The other thing that happened was, even those Rajas or Maharajas had fancy dreams about independence, there was such a euphoria among their own people. Their people would never have permitted them to this because everyone now got involved with this whole national struggle. It was really a national movement. These are Gandhi's great achievements on the side of as a social emancipator. But it is not only in India that you have Gandhi's impact, because once people learn that an unarmed people, if they are united and they are willing to die in a cause and are going to struggle non-violently, they have learned a great lesson. When India became independent, it was the 54th member in the United Nations. Today there are 193. All the others have become independent after that. Because once the brightest jewel from the British crown, this is the way Churchill described India, when that was plucked from the British crown, the will to hold on to all the little other things here and there was broken. Between 1947 and 1997, in those 50 years, more than 120 former colonial countries, British, French, Belgian, German, Spanish, all the largest democratization of the international political order, international political geography the world has ever seen. But it is not only that, it's not only the change of political geography, but the number of dictators that have been brought down through non-violent struggle. It's amazing. Just keep in mind to bring down 2 dictators in the last war, Hitler and Mussolini, more than 40 million people have been killed. And now you see the change that Gandhi has brought about in the last few years. I'll just read this out to you. The extent to which the world has been transformed in the last 7 decades through non-violent revolutions is revealed by the following facts. Between 1947, when India's independence was achieved, and 1980, over 100 British, French, Dutch, Belgian, Spanish, and Portuguese colonies became free. By the same date, India's non-aligned foreign policy was adopted by over 100 Asian, African, and Latin American countries, making the non-aligned movement the largest peace movement in history. Between 1980 and 2010, non-violent revolutions had politically empowered the US blacks and put a black family in the White House. Ended apartheid in South Africa and transformed it into a rainbow polity based on universal adult franchise. Overthrown the Marcos dictatorship and given the Philippines its and Asia's first woman head of state. Overthrown the Pinochet regime, the Pinochet dictatorship, and given Chile its and Latin America's first woman head of state. Given Bolivia its first Aymara, that's indigenous Bolivian head of state. And this is an amazing thing about Bolivia. He was an indigenous cocoa farmer, and the poor Aymara Indian had been kept underfoot for 500 years. He decided to take a Gandhi-style march from this little place called Cochabamba to La Paz. When they started out, I think there were 200 people. The only thing they were asking for was that all the natural gas and little petroleum that they had, the multinationals taking it out, were only being paid 10% of royalty. They said, we insist that you raise it at least to 50% so that that money could be spent on us. A simple demand. Started off with 100 people. By the time they arrived in La Paz, there were 30,000 people. The government collapsed. Another government came in, and they said, we're going to keep up the agitation until you give it. So they had to ultimately hold an election in which this dear man, Evo Morales, wins the election, becomes prime president of the country. Completely non-violent struggle. Then forced the resignation, this is the other amazing thing, forced the resignation and exile of General Musharraf in Pakistan, restored democracy there. This is called the Black Coat Revolution, where it was the lawyers who decided that they are not going to have this any longer. They refused to go to the courts. They collaborated, they first insisted that they hold the election. Once the election came in, they collaborated with the politicians and they induced and they forced him to the wall. They said, either you resign or we're going to impeach you. He initially resisted. He said, nothing doing. If you force me to the wall, I'll do this and I'll do that. But ultimately, he said, okay, I leave. I'm going on a pilgrimage to Mecca. And he suddenly left power and went in a neighboring country. Again, another non-violent revolution. Besides that, it brought down all European communist dictatorships and established democratic governments in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, German Democratic Republic, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, Serbia, Georgia, and Ukraine. The Berlin Wall was dismantled. Germany reunified. The Warsaw Pact scrapped, and many of its former members admitted to the European Union. In early 2011, that's last year, non-violent revolutions brought down oppressive and seemingly unassailable dictatorships in Tunisia and Egypt. About the latter revolution, Niranjan Ramakrishnan wrote in an article titled Gandhi on the Nile. The people of Egypt have raised a political monument that will rank alongside their mightiest wonders of antiquity. They have shown the world a model exercise of peaceful, determined, and dignified people power. 300 or more are said to have died in the struggle of the last 18 days. All of them were protesters, not one a representative of the hated regime. Instead of the suicide bombers for which the region had become renowned, this movement began with a single suicide. Instead of firebombing a building full of people, it began with one man in Tunisia setting fire to himself. Instead of clamoring for loaves and fishes, they stood firm on freedom, demanding nothing short of the dictator's exit. I was ambassador in Egypt, and I know how powerful Mubarak was. I never imagined in my lifetime I would see him brought down the way he was, and then carried on a stretcher into a courtroom, kept in an iron cage to answer for abuses of power. Incredible. The people of Egypt have exploded something far bigger than an atom bomb. The myth that the Arab and Islamic worlds are unsuited for satyagraha. The Egyptian people have enacted a revolution that would have made Gandhi proud, but their victory is all their own. In the light of all this, One is struck by the validity and accuracy of Johan Galtung. Johan Galtung, you know, is the great Swede, the great Gandhi scholar. The validity and accuracy of Johan Galtung's affirmation. Gandhi was certainly a revolutionary, much more revolutionary than the piecemeal revolutionaries of Western civilization. Gandhi revolutionized revolution itself. So this is the extent of Gandhi's impact on the world. Now in concluding, I would say that Sweden is a very special country. It's not only the ambassador that loves Sweden so much, I love it too. Because to a large extent, you are playing the role that India has played in centuries past of accepting other people's exiles. So many of them have come to India. The Parsis from Persia, the Jews from Spain, and from all over we have had people, oppressed in their own countries coming to India. This is what Sweden has been in recent years, and we have such a great admiration for you. And for me, as a diplomat, a great name is that of Wallenberg, an ambassador who has done so much in his own way to save a whole lot of Jewish lives. I hear really also now how many foreigners, Asians, many of them Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans are now here. I'm told, I hope this is accurate, that almost 25% of the population of Stockholm now are these people, and 19% for the whole country. It is a remarkable statistic. And I believe that you have very great cause to be proud of this whole culture, this whole approach. One thing I would however say, of late there has been a lot of anti-Islam feeling which has been spreading, particularly in your neighboring countries, which is really a very sad thing, because Islam is a great religion. And in fact, it is the same religion of the book. I myself am a Christian. It is starting from the Jewish holy books, the Christian holy books, and Gandhi had a very great regard for Islam. And one of the three books he always carried with him was the Bhagavad Gita, was the Bible, the New Testament, and the Quran. And one of the things that I believe that Gandhi placed such a great importance on justice. And I believe he got it from the Quran, because there's so much of an emphasis on justice and on charity in the Quran. I wish more people in the world would read it. It's a very enlightened book. And for me, if any proof was needed that this was revelation, is that the very first surah in the Quran says, read that you might be enlightened. It's being said to a completely illiterate man. And saying that, it is by reading, read so that you may enlighten, and know the word of God who taught with a pen. What an amazing definition. And what the Prophet achieved really was amazing, that until he arrived, the Arabs were mainly idol worshippers. He has managed to get them, get rid of their idol, united all these warring tribes, and spread the word all over the world. And what they have created in terms of architecture, culture, the mosques, tombs all over the world is a great heritage of mankind. So I believe there is a great need that we not fall into the trap, because a few people, get involved in some unacceptable things to brand the whole religion as something undesirable or evil. Let this never happen in Sweden, because you have had a very great tradition. You are a model really for a whole lot of countries. And when it comes to assistance to the developing countries, there are many rich countries in the world. Hardly any of them have met the target of 1% of their GDP to be given as foreign aid. and Sweden is one of the few who has. So we are very grateful to you, we admire you greatly, and I shall end by saying how honored I am to have had this opportunity to speak to you this evening, and I thank you for your attention.
And we are very honored that you came all the way from India to us with your message. My question to you is, as most nations in Europe, Sweden has large minorities which are striving for increased social and economic equality. How can Gandhian methods help them achieve their goal? Sure, I think.
Yeah, the only thing you need to do is to read about Gandhi's stay, and he has written about it himself, or what he did when he was in South Africa. Gandhi's whole life starts with standing up for the rights, initially of the Indians who were discriminated against, who had no rights, no vote of course, they couldn't walk on a pavement on which an Indian, a white man would walk, etc. What he did, first you do is to write in the papers, try to rouse public consciousness. Next you get, organize your people, make sort of long memorials to the government in London or wherever, is what he did. But when it didn't work, then he organized these people for satyagraha, and this is how it works. You have to take up the battle wherever there is discrimination. Of course, first of all, it is very necessary that all foreigners are model citizens of that country. There should never be a case where any of them is accused of not being a good citizen. That is the first priority. But after that, if there is discrimination, I think these are the things to do. Just read Gandhi's Experiments with Truth Again.
Thank you very much. And we have a young lady here in this hall, her name is Anna Peace, that she's responsible for all the diversity programs. So I hope you have got the message that the next stage is Satyagraha.
Thank you, sir.
We will have summer in Stockholm. We talked some months ago when we were planning to visit. And unfortunately, I was not able to fix that. We had summer, some weeks in between, but now it's a little cold. But Anita Engvall from Östra, she has found midsummer flowers. So it is the typical Swedish midsummer flowers, which the ladies in Sweden, they have on their head. So it's a bouquet. Please, thank you very much.